Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of patrons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon, so a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to More Books, Cannabear, Fibre Oats, Bogey, Michael Kahn, Rob H, Ben White, Maximum Gravy, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Mel B Styles, Troy Shuker, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Dale West Watson, Muted, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, The Real Gabster, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
No, I was thinking about my retirement a few months back. Like, how I'm going to do it, you know? I'm an assassin. It's the only way.
Okay, you have some strange thoughts. Thanks for sharing them with us.
The Globe Assassin.
Yep.
Well, you know, with the debate being over and everyone accepting the flat plane and then denying it later, but first accepting it, I figure you got to talk about something.
Apparently, a circle of equal altitude is not a circle of equal altitude.
Sounds like you got on the end of someone who's got a beef with celestial navigation again.
Yeah, that Homia or Homer, whatever he's bloody called. I was having a bit of a chat with him, and yeah, a circle of equal latitude isn't a circle, and it's not equal latitude. So
just when they say stuff like that,
I just laughed and left.
We'll just add on the reality of that statement, which is on a sphere Earth. So when they say things like that, it's like when we're talking about a tangent plane, we're not talking about the ground. They just leave off the rest of the statement. The sphere ground that they believe they've got and aren't measuring. It's just not that ground.
Yeah, which is the problem.
It's called a circle of equal altitude for a reason, wouldn't you say?
The clue's in the title, yeah.
They could still dance around it, but that 90-degree box they put there, that kills it right there.
Would it be a square dance?
Very good.
Well, the whole tangent plane thing, like, I know they're really desperate to try to assume a sphere underneath the plane they're measuring, but because this is so blatantly obvious. I mean, especially when you heard Zanuck and that what you released earlier, he's telling you about the flat plane. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, I listened to that before. That was great.
He tried to get around it at one stage by saying, well, that's what you're asking for, because he's having to describe a flat plane. Like, no, you're detailing what you do. The fact that you're detailing a flat plane isn't because I've asked you to detail a flat plane, it's because that's what you must do.
Well, yeah, that's part. It just, I don't want to, you know, assume these people are liars, but there's a point of how stupid can one person be? I mean, I know they can be really stupid, but
You just said
I
it
don't
like it
know.
was. No, first we're going to measure it flat. The globe bit comes later. I think that was verbatim what he said.
Yeah, which is dumb. It's like the dumbest thing I've ever heard anybody that believes they're on a sphere say.
That's how he understands it to work. We measure the flat plane for the elevation angles and the ground position and the circles of equal elevation, all flat, as required by the trick. But the sphere bit comes after we've measured it. We bend that line. I think Virus said that on an edit that I was just doing before the show. I started recording. He basically says, yeah, we do it all flat, we get all the measurements flat, but then we bend that line later. I can't remember how I phrased it, but that's essentially what they're doing. They're taking as you describe it, John, they take the flat line that they measure, they get an elevation angle from it flat, they do all the maths, and then afterwards they bend that flat line that they used to measure with, invalidating all of the original measurements. But they haven't seen it yet. They're saying it because that's how it's done. In literal terms, from the globe, you start with a flat plane, you measure your flat plane, you plot out your positions on a flat plane, and then what? Well, then we think there's a sphere somehow involved, and we'll bend all those straight lines we just used. So they say it like it is. It's nuts, but that's how it is, right? We're telling them, and they're confirming that they use a flat plane first.
Yeah, I think that's the part that's just got me shocked, that they can know they're measuring a flat plane, utilizing it as a flat plane, and then conceptually bending the lines into a sphere, and they think that's just fine.
Yeah. Some of them, like Zanuck, yeah, I know it's shocking to actually hear him disclose it, because that is the way it is. And it's like a couple of others that will obfuscate, dance around, lie sometimes, but ultimately they try and keep on track with the actual rhetoric. Zanuck's one of them. So he's attempting to obfuscate around the rhetoric whilst dropping in subtle points that are directly proving flat Earth without them necessarily being picked up on. So if he can get those under the radar, he can then move forward with bending an angle he just took straight as a measurement. So that's his main aim. But along that road, he can't overtly disclaim that he's not going to be capable of getting it from the sphere. He's just going to describe how the rhetoric describes getting that angle from a flat plane. So that's how he describes it. Now, his understanding is something that hasn't been reached yet by a lot of the people, presumably. I just haven't bothered looking into it. So the people out there, or they have looked into it, they know it's a problem, but they just don't want to admit it. I think McToon's one of them. I mean, I'm reading between the lines. I don't want to divine his thoughts too much, but it does make me smile. Because while Zanuck is quite content to admit, yeah, we've got to get the flat plane measurements, the sphere bit comes later. Toon isn't happy to admit that yet. I'm up to, I think, it's either 45 or 46 times I've explained this to him. And he doesn't want to concede it. He started appealing to the tangent with reference to Euclid, rather than just saying tangent plane. So I can say, yeah, tangent's debunked in 2020, so we've got a plane then. So we're going to need a plane to get these angle measurements in your challenge. He's not quite there yet. I'll get him there. He's being trained at the moment like Cats. Cats got up to 100 repetitions plus of the gas pressure without a container argument. He got there in the end, quote, conspiracy cats. Without the container, there can be no pressure, end quote. So he got there in the end, and I'm sure Toon will too, like Zanuck is currently being shown to him. Because that's what I'm doing. Just taking out little trimmed bits of Zanuck, admitting the rhetoric as it is, with a flat plane being measured first, and just posting those to Toon. This is what I've been explaining to you 46 times, Toon. What Zanuck's currently confessing here about needing a flat plane first. Yeah, you'll get there in the end, sunshine, I assure you.
I think he's gone into hiding, that Zanuck now. He's not been seen. Well, I've not seen him since he had his. He was told about himself. He's usually in the after shows shouting his mouth off, but since then I've not seen him.
Well, thank you for letting me know. I care, but yeah, as I say, he's going to come in and just say it like it is. He needs a flat plane. This is a depiction on screen we keep using quite regularly. It's come from a globe Earth believing book about navigation. And when they draw it out with the bastardisation that is the sphere Earth beneath an actual angle measurement taken from a flat plane, this is what you end up with as a depiction. In reality, this is what you actually do on screen now. You take an angle from a flat baseline. That's it. It's really simple. So that's what they do too. They just want us to brush past the fact that this on screen now is the angle measurement that they're going to be taking, and then afterwards the line along the bottom is going to be bent by them when they assume it's a sphere, even though they just measured it and can only measure it off a flat plane. because that's what Earth is. That's how it's used. There's no translation in sextant use or celestial navigation to a sphere Earth, and they're trying to argue with us about our method. It's not. It's just celestial navigation, and compare it to their method, which isn't celestial navigation, with descriptions that don't match up with what you actually do when you measure and navigate on the flat plane. So they're screwed. Some of them don't even know it yet. Some of them, as I say, do know it, just don't want to admit it.
Yeah, they're really desperate to take that flat plane and then turn it at different angles relative to the celestial sphere, which, if the horizon was a tangent point, right, that you could measure, that you might have an argument, but you would still be using a flat plane, so it kind of invalid, like you can't even get to that step.
Exactly. If they're going to draw it out with an equatorial plane and tip the plane at 45-degree angle, it's like, yeah, but the plane that's actually being utilised for this angle is still a flat plane in the middle of a sphere. Yeah, that's where you're actually getting the angle measurement from, because you're holding a tool to measure an angle, and you're saying that angle is on this plane. In other words, not on the outside edge of your sphere that you've drawn arbitrarily around that flat plane that you'll be using the angle with.
The sextant has been used for 5 centuries. It measures angles. Can't measure an angle off a curved baseline. It's over right there.
Yep.
Well, if you can hold up the celestial sphere flat plane model, right, and then get somebody to defend a projection of that onto a flat disk, get them to take that position, and then you take the flat plane model, and then say it's a globe, do a lot in the way of confusing the heck out of people.
Yeah. So you end up, like I did in the comments yesterday, where people go, this navigation method's used with globe maps. And you respond, no, maps are all flat. Obviously, so you can use them with elevation angle measurements. They need to be flat. They are flat. There aren't any globe maps. But in their deluded mind, they look at a map, lay it out flat on a table, and go, that's a globe, that is. They're just nuts at this stage, as far as I'm concerned. You go, no, it's clearly not a globe. Look, it's flat. Yeah, it's come from a globe. No, the globe came from flat Earth angle measurements too. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I think them trying to put perspective into an objective view, and that's what gives you the celestial sphere. That's when you're trying to model out what you see pretty much in God mode or orthographic view. Like that's when things start getting messed up, because they think I don't even know what they think at this point.
They think the arc of the tool that you're measuring. They think an arc of the tool that you're measuring an angle with and showing a declination, i.e., the angle dropping towards the horizon of Polaris, for example, is actually mapped out with you, then teleported to the centre of a sphere that they've assumed, and the arc of the tool, rather than the angle that you measured, being the arc of the ground that you weren't standing on when you were measuring it and comparing it to the centre of Earth measurement that you've now presupposed. Therefore, the angle isn't an angle, because you can't take it from the surface, because you've now translated the arc of the tool to be the surface, and you to be at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth taking the angle that you actually just took on the surface. Indeed, John. Very, very confusing for anybody who doesn't have a clue what they're listening to.
It's delusional. I mean, it's overcomplicating for delusion's sake, it seems like. I don't...
They're in denial.
I don't know what to say at this point.
I think what John's trying to say is when you get to the point where you kind of don't really keep up in your own mind, you think, well, I'm sure I'm missing something here, but somebody somewhere's going to have figured it out. That's the rhetoric. So it must make sense, even though I don't really follow it, and it's kind of complicated, and it really doesn't make any sense if I take it apart. But no one's taking it apart. They're using whatever we're saying, well, wouldn't you criticise that for the fact that you're laying out a flat map and telling people it's a globe? And when they say it isn't, you tell them it's come from a globe. When you tell them the globe has come from flat Earth angle measurements, they tell you, what do they tell us? We get a zenith. I don't know what they tell us. They don't at the moment. They tell us we get a flat plane. In fact, why am I even questioning my memory in this regard? When we tell them they need a flat Earth angle elevation measurement, they tell us we're right. and say, yeah, we're going to need a flat plane first. So that's what they tell us at that stage.
I got a question for John. John, if you had seen the sextant argument prior to the black swan, you would have dropped the ball and come to flat earth over the sextant. Am I guessing correctly?
Yeah. Well, I can't say for sure what I would have done. It's hard to say, really. Everybody's different. Maybe if I held on to that tangent, I could have worked it in some way in a delusional. I don't know. I would like to think I would have seen it, but
the reason I bring that up is because I sense what you're saying. You're saying, hey, all I needed to see was the black swan, and then it was over because I would be delusional to keep fighting for a ball after that. But then if you had seen the sextant, you would say, well, maybe. But then right now you're saying these guys are delusional for not switching by seeing the sextant. You follow what I'm saying?
I'm not sure if I do.
Well, what he is saying isn't true, because you've explained a couple of days ago that had it not been for the fact that there was a journey, with you as a baller, admittedly, on that process of looking at begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking, earth curve calculators, and constant assertions of the physical geometric sphere edge horizon blocking boats and buildings, when it came to the debunking of the physical tangent point blocking boats and buildings, leaving you with a paradox because you haven't got the very thing you're claiming in the first instance acquirable by measurement anymore. At that point, with the lead up to it, whereas what Tenth has just suggested is you just saw the black swan on Eureka, which isn't the case, right, John?
Yeah, that wasn't the case. I'd been in the argument for probably 2, maybe even 3 years. I mean,
That's included in my question. I'm not talking about a novice who just comes to the subject. The black swan, we're familiar with everything and realize, well, don't have geometric horizon, it's open. And now you're wondering why people who see the sextant argument are delusional, because you're saying it's easy. You measure it flat, then you convert it to a globe. So in a sense, like at the beginning, I said the sextant will bring everyone back to the black swan, yet to be revealed by what I mean by that, because then I'm saving that for the end. But for the obvious reasons, I think you can see how the sextant and the black swan work together, right?
well, I mean, if you follow a purely logical route from the sextant argument, just in like a vacuum with nothing else happening before it, can't get to a sphere without violating the geometry that you're utilizing to acquire the angle. So you would never get a tangent plane to assume a tangent for the sphere geometry.
Well, I think you answered my question right there.
I mean, that's going to come back and be the situation in terms of them just assuming a tangent plane at every point like Virus did a few days ago. But it breaks the cardinal rule of flat earth debate now, doesn't it? You don't beg the question.
It has to be consensus at this point, because they're not able to reach the conclusion it's a sphere logically. There's nothing. It has to be just the consensus belief that's keeping the majority of ballers in place, if it's not something nefarious.
Yeah, I think we've got 300 years potentially of consensus being ushered in a particular direction. That's what we've got.
Well,
I agree.
It's like postmodernism, when the rational, logical, scientific method thought came in. There were absolutes. Now they want to say We want to be postmodernists. We don't want any absolutes. Your truth is your truth. My truth is my truth. Nobody's wrong. This is where they're going.
There are no absolutes, and I know that absolutely.
Yeah, I can't remember who said that, but we did have a good laugh about it on Ballbusters recently.
There is no certainty, and I'm certain of it.
I agree. This guy worked.
Did he really? Wow.
Neil, you roboted like crazy.
I get it.
Oh, well, what a lovely story that was. Thank you, Neil.
Yeah, you may need to drop and rejoin, Neil. That was choppy as heck. I didn't even get to use the only thing I know is I don't know anything. That was the next one I was coming with. Yeah, like I used to think that was such a humble statement, you know, like, oh, that's that right there. That's the way you got to be. You got to know that you don't know anything. Not even thinking about how contradictory that it is, you know.
Well, there is a more true way of putting it. I can't remember. It's another philosopher stating it. I can't remember who, but the more you learn, the more you realise how ignorant you are, or how little you know.
Right.
Correct. Can anybody hear me now?
That's
yes.
That would be a fair. That would be a fair way of putting it. You know, to say the more I know, the less I think. You know, I thought I knew. You know, but you still got to know. You know, you need that knowledge claim to exist first. Like saying the only thing you know is you don't know anything, then you're not even capable of making that statement, you know, because you don't know anything.
It's kind of valid at a point, isn't it? So if you say, well, the knowledge is your understanding of the heliocentric model and you study it, you brush up on it, I can relate. And then you get a good idea of how it works, and then you find out that it's all nonsense. At that juncture, you can say, yeah, okay, the only thing I realise is I don't know anything, right? And I've heard Jeranism make the same statement at some point during his journey through this topic. You know, you reach a point where he was studying history and realising that there's a lot of things that didn't stack up. And then at some stage, he's like, well, we've got to throw it all out. We've got to kind of start afresh and realise we don't know anything, you know, and sort of start afresh. And his wife turned to him and said, well, okay, we'll kick out the globe Earth then. And Jaron's reaction to it was, whoa, we don't have to go that far. That was his reaction. But you can understand that in some way that would translate to there being a point thereafter where you go, okay, I can now confidently say that what I'd learned, what I thought was my understanding was wrong. Yeah, it's a complete contradiction in terms to say, well, what I realise now is I don't realise anything. Well, you've still got the language to state that, haven't you? So let's be honest, that's nonsense. But the sentiment I can kind of understand.
The better way to put it would be the more I know, the less I understand. Because
yeah, when you know the meaning of the word understand, that makes perfect sense, yes. The further you go, the more you realise that there's so many traps of models, and men have come up with them, and it's always for the same reason, to gain some element of control over other men. That's it. So if you can appreciate what a model is, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the context of this framework, i.e. globe Earth models and flat Earth models and banana-shaped models. I'm talking about a framework of an understanding of anything. That's a model. And people want to impart that on people. And the more people they can impart it on, the more power they have, because people are working within their framework, their model. Now, if you can avoid that crap at all costs, you'll do very nicely. Mentally, not necessarily financially.
Well, the part of understanding is belief. You have comprehension and belief to come to knowledge. Like there's two routes to it. You can experience it and know that way, or you can comprehend someone else's experience, right? But if that experience isn't true, then you're not really dealing with knowledge. You're dealing with a false claim,
Right. Exactly. So when people ask me about my journey to flat Earth, I give them the same answer in terms of it's starting with an eyebrow being raised as I'm looking at the back of an airplane window. I've walked down the aisles to the back fire escape or whatever they call it, emergency exit, and because there's no seats there, you can get a reasonably wide angle through that tiny. They're all the same size, but you can negotiate your way around it. So that's what I'd do, and just watch for hours and hours, as long as they weren't telling me to sit in my seat. Watch, typically with all the clunking and clattering of the galley or whatever they call it behind you, and I'd just be there looking out the window. Everyone else would be looking at the back of their seat, looking at a movie. And while I was looking, I was thinking, I wish I could go higher. I wish I could see the curve of the Earth. Now, that phraseology was globehead phraseology that is, it's hopefully demonstrating to the audience that I had a good understanding of the current rhetoric, which is to say that in spite of the Earth curve being represented at the horizon, which I could definitely see, my understanding based on the anti-flat Earth rhetoric I didn't even realise I was going to be parroting to myself, you can't go high enough. 30,000, 40,000 isn't high enough to see the curve of the Earth. Now, I didn't know the contradiction, like I say, in terms of, well, you're looking at the horizon, that's supposed to be the Earth curve, isn't it? Yeah? I just thought I can't see it curving in the form of it being a physical geometric sphere edge that curves at the horizon. Not that that would be what they represent in their maths, but that's not the point. I knew there was something I couldn't see and wanted to see it. So then when Math Powerland utters that went through my mind. I've looked at the flat plane, I've experienced the flat plane, and I've literally told myself how flat it is because I know I'm not seeing it curving, and justifying to myself why I'm seeing it not curving, why it's not curving. So all of those things, I'm basically telling myself how flat it is. But because I'm a globe believer, I'm not. I'm justifying why I can't see it as a sphere Earth. So that flashed through my mind, and there's an instant recognition that I've experienced it flat.
Yeah, like when Neil deGrasse Tyson slaps the ball and says you can't see it from that altitude, it's kind of like you're doing that trick to yourself.
Exactly. Precisely. It is that exact magic trick. Maybe we'll get into that in the live show, because it's a magic trick we haven't covered in a while. It's extremely clever, like a lot of the Globe Earth magic tricks. Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and, excuse me, if you are new to this channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by Neil, 10th Man, Refracted Curvature, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Hello, everybody.
Good morning. Let's do a bit of housekeeping. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
Well, Nathan, if you're 1 millimeter above the beach ball, you wouldn't expect to see the curve of the Earth.
Perfect.
Hello.
Hey, Arwin. That's an excellent magic trick that Neil deGrasse Tyson pulled on everybody. Because the horizon in the begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator, marked with an X and labelled horizon, is Earth curve. That's what the horizon is in your maths. Now, to assert that at a certain altitude, if you're an ant above a beach ball, you wouldn't see the curve of the Earth, well, that's what you claim when we're standing 1 foot or 1 inch above the surface, that we have a geometric physical sphere edge limitation to our view that boats fall over, called the horizon. So when he slaps it and tells you that you wouldn't expect to see the curve of the Earth from 1 inch above this beach ball, he's reifying a model without you realising and claiming that the horizon that you see isn't expected to be Earth curve when you see it at a given altitude. Well, the horizon that we see isn't a geometric physical sphere edge limitation, formerly known as Earth curve. It's just the horizon. It's a limitation to your view, but it's not a physical edge. We debunked that in 2020. There is no geometric sphere edge limitation to do maths on. Great trick by Neil deGrasse Tyson. People don't realise how clever it is. Further to that, now I've got the how it's tricking you into believing you're on a sphere out of the way. When he slaps it, he says, and I quote, "That stuff is flat." Now, he's giving you a justification for why you would see it and experience it as flat, without appreciation of the horizon that's claimed to be an Earth curve obstruction. Clever trick. Any comments on that? I've got one more point, if not.
Yeah, I got a
Nobody
comment.
ever claimed the horizon was Earth curve.
Nobody's claiming we see physical geometry.
No, they have claimed it. They told us the boats' bottoms were being obstructed by Earth curve by you standing on the seashore. And here's Neil deGrasse saying, no way that you could even see that. So he's going against what they teach, much like they teach Newtonian gravity up until university level. Then they say, oh, none of that is true. We're going Einsteinian now. So it's almost like the same thing, if you follow.
It's just a way of getting both sides to reify the horizon into a physical limitation, obstruction, formerly known as Earth curve. Because when he's slapping the ball and declaring that that stuff is flat, flat earthers jump over themselves to say, well, he's telling you how flat it is, but he isn't. He's telling you about a physical reification of a geometric limitation that apparently you wouldn't see if you were a certain distance above a beach ball that's sphere-shaped. But that ultimately makes both sides retain their ideas about what the horizon would be. This is exemplified by flat earthers who, quote, "We see too far." No, we don't see too far. We just see. Why can I see that clock 20 miles away? Why are you asking? You want me to answer? Because you've got a set of eyeballs? No, but it's too far. Why is it too far? I can see it, you can see it, we can see it, they can see it. Too far? No, it isn't. No, there should be, oh, here we go, a physical geometric sphere edge limitation to our view at the horizon. Excuse me, why should there be that? Oh, well, because globe believers tell us that there should be that. So now we're going to argue about this should-be obstruction that we're not seeing. No, I just see a clock. There it is. No further explanation required. The fact that we don't see a physical limitation to our view isn't my problem and isn't of any concern and won't be explained as how we're seeing, quote, too far. We're not. Any more on Earth curve? Go on, John.
I was going to say that brings me to a question. The holographic hyena projection of a real clock. You know that long spiel you give?
of a slightly looming non-standard refraction hyena holographic projection of a lighthouse from behind the reified physical sphere edge geometric horizon debunked by the Black Swan. That one.
Refraction.
How many years did it get you? Did you have to debate this subject to be able to put that all into one sentence, pretty much?
7, because it came with the Black Swan included. No, that wouldn't be true. 5.
That's a lot of information for someone new to this subject to take in. I guess it really comes down to the individual and how much they're willing to research, understand what's actually being said.
Yep, that's the downside to being at the tip of the spear. But there we go. There it is on screen, marked with the next labelled horizon, geometric in nature, with Earth curve maths claim to prove its physical sphere edge location to block things, with a value labelled down the bottom here as hidden. Hidden by what, you say? Hidden by the physical geometric sphere edge horizon formerly known as Earth curve. Of course, we debunk that. We don't have a physical limitation known as Earth curve as a horizon. The horizon is not Earth curve, and the Earth is not a sphere, because you'd need the horizon as a geometric limitation to measure the R value on this diagram marked from G to C. The dotted line is a representation of something that you cannot see, but in this description, it describes it as the line of sight to the apparent horizon. Line of sight to the apparent? No, we don't see that. Line of sight described by Andrew Thomas Young from O to G. It's dotted because we don't see it. Here's Al-Biruni using that dotted line to derive R. The dotted line we couldn't see in the last diagram, it wasn't visible, even though described as having a line of sight to it by Andrew Thomas Young. The visible horizon, because we only have one, is further around this curve, but Al-Biruni is using a straight line on no-atmo day to derive physical R-based geometry for a sphere. After measuring the height of the mountain off a flat plane, I might add. Any more to add on Earth curve? This is good. Nope. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Well, before you can talk about the Coriolis effect that most people assume is happening on Earth, wouldn't you first have to establish a radial measurement?
Yeah, you'll need a flat plane and an angle measurement to do that.
So it becomes a non sequitur to even talk about Coriolis if you're measuring a flat plane.
That's correct. Once you're establishing that the sphere you're bending from flat Earth angle measurements wouldn't have any axis to rotate about, it becomes farcical indeed. However, there are still a certain number of fundies who don't realise that the Earth as a sphere in a model is derived from flat Earth angle measurements, and that sphere in a model derived from flat Earth angle measurements is claimed to turn because we see star movement in the sky.
Well, if that was true, then we would have Coriolis, right?
Yes, if the Earth was a sphere in that model derived from flat Earth angle measurements, then it would be rotating as a non-inertial turning reference frame. And the effect they claim on a sphere Earth, which we don't live on, we live on a flat plane, that's how they got the angles to claim that model, would have Earth turning as a sphere beneath an inertial reference frame to see things drift. As they claim, with footballs, pendulums, gyroscopes, they're all not actual drift observed as you turn beneath something. Claim to be turning underneath the football to see it curve through the goal. Claim to be turning underneath the gyro to see it drift at 15 degrees an hour. Claim to be turning underneath the pendulum while it swings in its fixed reference to show apparent, that's not actual, deviation, i.e. knocking over the dominoes as Earth turns underneath. Well, that's Earth turning underneath. So we're all clear, the Coriolis claim on a turning Earth model derived from flat Earth angle measurements would have Earth turning underneath stuff. Yeah, we don't experience that. Earth doesn't turn underneath anything. If it did, we'd shorten flight times. And drones would have Earth turning underneath them 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. Obviously that doesn't happen because Earth isn't a sphere, doesn't have an axis, isn't rotating, and was derived from flat Earth angle measurements in the first instance. Any evidence of the distance to the Sun?
It's over there, shining nice and bright. whatever it is.
Got some bagarking going on in the chat from Multi-Tom Tom. He says, bagark! Refraction. Bagark! Gravity. Bagark! Coriolis. Very good. Speaking of gravity, go on.
I was just going to ask that they taught us in school that it was 93 million miles away.
You'll need a flat plane to derive an R, to impose that R on a sphere-Earth model derived from the flat Earth angle measurements, and then derive that sphere-Earth angle measurement derived from a flat Earth onto Venus, and then you'll have to apply Kepler's third law of interplanetary motion to get the scaling values to give you that distance to that sun, all of which would require a flat Earth angle measurement to be taken in the first instance. Distance to the sun? Anybody? Any more for any more? Is everyone off muting? I haven't really paying too much attention. We miss you, Righteous Force. Check if everyone's on mute. Yes, there are a couple of people on mute. Feel free to join in if I've just taken you off mute in Discord. Any scientific evidence of gravity? Don't all go at once.
But if you pick up a pin and drop it, it falls back down on the ground. That's gravity, right?
Until I grab the tail end of a string attached to a helium balloon, snip it off and let go of that.
That's buoyancy, right? That's caused by gravity.
Buoyancy is an assertion of gravity, and in that assertion you have homogeneous layers of gas pushing down. Well, gas doesn't form layers, doesn't go down, go boom boom, to assert that it's pushing the things below up. No. Relative density isn't buoyancy. Again, a misapprehension amongst flat earthers. They hear this word buoyancy and don't have a good appreciation of how that fits into the definition of gravitational forces. So they say buoyancy. It's like, well, what are you talking about? Buoyancy needs gravity. You know, gas go down, go boom boom. The stuff above, the gases above, forcing the gases below down. Yeah, displacing them upwards. Well, that's not how gas behaves. It disperses into whatever containment it's got. It's got no bonds. It doesn't form layers. Any scientific evidence of gravity? $100 people watching after only 15 minutes. Woohoo! Please share the show. Very warm welcome to all of you who's just joined. Really appreciate you being here.
No scientific evidence of it. No hypothesis for it. And if John hadn't picked up the pin, it wouldn't be falling.
You want to add something, Don?
I've been sitting trying to figure out which gravity we want the scientific evidence for. Is it the attracting gravity that pulls things towards centers, or the gravity that causes orbits, or is it the container gas barrier or the force that contains the gases? Is that so? Which one of the gravities are we presently talking about?
Oh, well, you can just mix them all up in a big pot and pull out whatever's required at any given time, and then any of the garbage that's left over, you just slop it out. But then scrape it back off the wall and put it back in the pot should you need it later.
If you're going to build a model, you got to use super glue. You got to have some kind of glue to hold it together.
Yeah, gravity's not a force, let alone a glue.
Well, didn't they come up with it because they were proposing the Earth was a globe and it was spinning, giving us Coriolis? But since everything is measured flat, there's no need for gravity.
There was never any need for gravity. You know, their assertion that it's an explanation for things going down 9.8 meters per second squared is nonsense, because gas doesn't do that. Gas has mass in their vernacular. Does it go down, go boom boom, 9.8 meters per second? No, it does not. It expands in all directions, all vectors, to fill the availability of volume it has to fill. On that note, any evidence that you can have gas pressure, like we all breathe, without a container?
Good morning.
Hey, Chocolate.
Well, I heard from Blue Marble Science that if you take 2 containers, you can demonstrate gas pressure without a container.
Maybe you didn't understand the question then. So it's gas pressure without a container as opposed to gas pressure in a container, because that's not gas pressure without a container. I'll just read out Fibre Oats' super chat. Thank you very much, first and foremost, Fibre Oats, for the super chat. I was taught gravity was a force when I was young, and I'm pissed off. I was lied to. Maybe John can send some of his old people, hitmen, to take revenge. Who? What? Who's he talking about? Thank you very much for the super chat, Fibre Oats. Really appreciate it.
John's retirement plan, the Globe Assassin.
Oh, right, in the pre-show. Oh, maybe he's in the chat, in the Discord server. Yeah, in the pre-show, John mentioned that he wanted to be an assassin when he retires. Because why not? I mean, you've got less to lose. That's his logic.
Well, back to gas pressure. Remember, Dr. Danny Faulkner was accusing flat earthers of just jumping around YouTube and picking any old YouTube videos to prove a point. And what did Danny Faulkner do? He goes to Blue Marble Science.
That was the most delicious taste of irony you could ever get. So to go on a radio show, these stupid flat earthers, all they do is a quick Google search and they think the Earth's flat. Oh, it's just pathetic. Hey, how is it you have gas pressure without a container? Oh, you know what I'll do? I'll go on Google. What's this? First result, Blue Marble Science, gas pressure without a container? Well, I'll cite that immediately. The container proves my point. What? It's like, you complete bonehead. You went to a reference from an idiot who had 2 containers to show gas pressure without a container. And how did you get there? With a cursory Google search. How beautiful. Yeah, Danny Faulkner, you're a clown. And you deserve everything you get. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics.
Chocolate was about to lay down a good quote.
Oh, sorry, Chocolate, go ahead.
I was just going to remind that then when he was directly asked by Nathan Thompson, how do you have gas pressure without a container? Crickets. Nothing. Absolutely no response to that. But the same guy said, "Oh, but you guys don't have. You guys might be confused about this flat Earth thing. You don't have the answers. I have the answers."
Yeah, the irony continues. Absolutely correct. So yeah, not only is he saying don't do cursory searches like the flat earthers, and he was demonstrated to do, he also boldly declared that if you need answers and you haven't got them, I've got them. Except if you ask me about how you have gas pressure without a container, in which case I will eventually answer you after a cursory Google search by way of 2 containers.
Does he have a PhD for real, or is that like he got that out of a Cracker Jack box?
Not going to ad hom him in that regard. Not that he's offering any arguments in response other than his 2 containers. I don't care. Yeah, I'm sure he has got a PhD.
The sad part is he works for an outfit called Answers in Genesis, supposed to be a Christian site, and he comes up with this junk. It's like, I mean, as a Christian, you're supposed to tell the truth, and you might as well do some research before you talk. And this clown comes off saying to all Christians that flat earthers are crazy, and then he does this crazy thing himself. And yet, if you just go to Genesis and read the book, it doesn't talk about heliocentrism whatsoever. I mean, it's a joke.
100% pure projection. He doesn't have any answers in regards to flat Earth. He hasn't done any research and will, when challenged with questions he doesn't have answers to, do a cursory Google search. Knowing that, he's gone on the radio and gone, these flat earthers don't know anything. They just do cursory Google searches. You need to ask me because I know. Well, no, you don't. But you're going to try and play the big I am after declaring all the things you're guilty of and projecting them onto your opponent. We've seen it 1,000 times.
He's just selling books, just money. That's what he's about.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
If after all those other questions you don't see the problem with the sphere, I doubt that one's going to get through to anybody.
Any evidence of the R value? Earth, radius.
That was pretty much debunked when a geometric horizon that we're told we see that blocks buildings and boats in the distance was all of a sudden not seen, only existed in the math, and can never be seen because we have an atmosphere, in quotes.
I think that's it. Did I ask any viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics? Yeah, I did, didn't I? Just chocolate out another question. Can we get an answer on that, though? Is anybody in possession of any valid hypotheses from any of those fields?
Well, if you were a heliocentrist in those fields, you would first need a flat plane to derive an R value to assert your phenomena existing within.
Shout out to Fibrotes, who says, I was taught gravity held the atmosphere to the Earth, and I'm pissed off I was lied to. How do you acquire John's services? No, when he retires, he might consider, in a pre-show of a flat Earth debate discussion, as a jokey aside, being an assassin. I don't think he actually is offering his services here. And even if he was serious, I would want a cut of that.
Right, because I would be soliciting through your
Absolutely, that's
platform.
right. This is my corner.
Right.
You've got it. Right, I think that concludes the housekeeping. Did we miss anything? No, I don't think we did.
That's pretty concise.
24 minutes and we covered all of them in reasonable detail. It's not bad. Didn't cover them at all yesterday. Not really. Such is life.
You know, I just thinking about it though, like if before I found this subject, if I would have stumbled on to this channel and heard the information that was just passed back and forth, I wonder how I would have taken it, you know, because some people see it right away and other people like just can't for some reason.
I think the people who can't, as you put it, probably had a look at some of the heliocentric information. For instance, gravity. Let's take pseudo-Riemannian force-space time bending. And when it's been explained to them, or when they've looked at it, they haven't fully understood it. But they accept it as something that's correct and real because there it is being taught as correct and real. So it doesn't fully matter that they don't fully understand it. Because that's the way it is. So when someone comes along that challenges it based on a good understanding of how it works, or as the case may be, doesn't work, they're not going to understand that either. So if they can't understand the original concept but accept it and then try to debate about it, they're not going to understand the unravelling from someone who does have a good understanding of it. So in both positions, both before it was attacked by us and after they tried to refute it, it made no difference to their comprehension levels. They go away in a sort of neutral state, having just happened to have had an argument with a flat earther, and most likely what rattles around in their brain afterwards is, that guy was an idiot, or something to that effect.
So you're saying they need to be educated in their religion first before you can destroy their religion?
I'm not saying that. QE has been saying that ever since I met him. Yes. You need to learn your own stupid religion first. Because 99% of the time they don't know their own religion. They don't know what heliocentrism actually is.
My thing is, do people not relate what they learn to their reality? Is that a problem for some people? Because when I got into this and what I started hearing as a response was, well, things go down. And I said, okay, I get that some things go down, but not everything goes down. Depending on where it is and what it is, some things go up, some things just float. So how is everything goes down even a response to me? That was nonsensical from the get-go.
Yep. And if you were the globe believer in that scenario as opposed to you or I, Chocolate, you might fathom that for a few moments. Like many things, I did do this. I'm not going to pretend I'm the high and mighty when it comes to heliocentrism. I wasn't. You know, there were certain things that I just couldn't fathom. So I stuck them in the back of my mind and went, that's just how it is. I just don't understand it fully. Now, looking back on them, you go, well, it wasn't that you didn't understand it. It was incomprehensible and nonsense. And because you couldn't figure that out at the time, you just didn't bother. You put it to the back of your mind and accepted it as being the standard of the world you lived in. It isn't. Most people just don't assess it that deeply.
That's a form of compartmentalization, though, right?
Yeah, self-compartmentalization. But those things...
I mean, yeah.
Go on, Chocolate, and then I'll read out some super chats.
Now, I was going to say, but I mean, I guess John's right. It is self-compartmentalization, because how are you not capable enough to, okay, after reading about gravity and learning about gravity and all this crap, how are you not living in a reality where not everything does what this effect is supposed to or this cause, whatever, whichever one on whatever day is supposed to be? Especially when you come to gas. Like, everybody knows you need some type of container for gas. That's just normal. I mean, at the time, I was working in a warehouse. I had propane tanks. I had all types of gas tanks. I used to have to change the tank in my forklift. I mean, it's just normal, everyday thing to know you need a container in order to have some type of pressure at all. Why is that even a thing?
I don't know, because PhD Thunderfoot Clown tells them gas go down, go boom boom, and then pours a load of bouncy balls into a fish tank. Quick couple of shout outs. So shout out to, where's my mouse gone? There it is. Bex, who says, I want to rock. Thank you very much for the super chat. Really appreciate the support. Also, another shout out. That's your hat trick. Thank you very much for all the super chats, 5 votes. Really appreciate it. Says, I can't wait that long. Maybe we can ask Neil. He's Italian. I'm sure he knows some assassins.
Before we do, sorry, Neil.
No, it's 10th.
No, I was going to say something. I'm on the road. I apologize to what Chocolate said, so I'll be quick about it. If you know Chocolate's story and my story, we fought it when we were young. We saw it was, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but I said, that doesn't make sense, blah, blah, blah. And I fought it before I was indoctrinated. Now you're talking to people who've been indoctrinated who didn't fight it. Or maybe they fought it, but they got indoctrinated. So now we're getting them as young adults or even older adults. So if they first saw it and didn't raise an eyebrow and say, that don't make sense, like Chocolate and I did, but now they're fully indoctrinated, they don't have much of a chance. Whereas we weren't indoctrinated because we fought it. And then it was like when the teacher says, well, I don't even believe it, I just got to teach it. Well, that settles that, right? So then when Flat Earth became popular, it's like, I knew it, right? I mean, that's the way Chocolate and I feel, if I'm not speaking too boldly for Chocolate.
Well, isn't that a bad sign, though? Because, like, that would imply that some form of consensus was needed before people would accept it, you know?
Neil? Oh, he's not here. You're not going to get a reaction. I don't want to speak on behalf of 10th. He's driving at the moment, so.
Okay, well, I was going to bring something up about the compartmentalizing, because I mean, if we do that, like not even knowing we're doing it, like how much is done that way? Because compartmentalization is done in education a lot too. You have fields of study, and then you have experts in those fields, which is a type of compartmentalization as well. Is it the compartmentalization that's part of the problem?
Yes, but for me it was also part of the solution. So all of those things I stuck on a shelf in the back of my mind because they didn't tally in the way I'd want to tally them in the time I had to tally them. They came back out and to the forefront the moment Matt Powerland uttered the words flat Earth in a way that wasn't ridiculing them. Suddenly they all flashed before my eyes. I'm like, my God! Oh yeah, all that stuff! So, yeah, it gets compartmentalised, but it's not thrown out.
But I was just saying, like the anti-flat earthers that are in this subject right now, part of their problem may be that they've not stepped back and tried to look at it as a whole instead of, because it's always apologetics for this claim or, well, this is why this doesn't happen the way we say it does, but this is the excuse, like they've not stepped back and just went, that I'm making excuses for why I say what happens doesn't happen.
Yeah, you've got to bring it to a head, haven't you, for those types of fundamentalists? Because, no, they're going to remain in a compartmentalised cognitive dissonance state where they'll pull out whatever they require to not have to face the awful truth because they're trying to get away from that. So, yeah, that's what they'll do. But when you get to an argument like the elevation angle argument, and part of their rhetoric includes acquisition of an angle from a flat Earth, they're going to state that. Now, it's not like that at that point can remain compartmentalised, because in that regard, you're just dealing with the ground, you're dealing with the surface, you're moving around on it, and that has been done for, several hundred years. And what are you going to do? Deny that process? Well, yeah, that's what they've tried to do, tried to rearrange it into being our process. In other words, they want to argue against celestial navigation, but they can't because it's just a well-established process. But if they can reposition it somehow to be our process, and what we say it is, as opposed to what it just is, then they might win that point in that moment. So if we weren't as au fait with the geometric argument to date, they'd come in and start arguing about a geometric tangent point that they're correcting for dip, and we might go along with it. Well, again, we haven't necessarily... We could be guilty of not stepping back and realising that, hold on, they've shelved their no straight lines to anything ever, no Atmo day, and now they're telling you about the straight lines that they need. Yeah? Well, that's the compartmentalisation that you're talking about. But it's only when they give out a statement that makes it clear, like Zanuck did the other day, no, I'm going to be measuring a flat Earth first, the sphere bit comes later. When that's part of the rhetoric, then you have to assess it. Again, I've been saying this for about, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, maybe even longer now. That's going to send them to the nut house. Because you're having to declare it right off the cuff. Yeah, I need a flat Earth. Yeah, to bend it later into a sphere. What's the problem? Just saying it is painful if you're a baller.
Yeah, that's like so dumb. It's hard to put into words. Like I can't think of anything else so ignorant that everyone believes. Like trepanning is about as close as I could get. I was going to compare it to a stupid belief,
Trepanning, for anybody who doesn't know, is drilling a hole in your head to release the demons or headaches.
Yeah, the globe model seems to be falling to about the level of trepanning now.
Yeah, bull-jitsu. But it's just the ultimate concession. I mean, we half got it out of the black swan. Well, it's refracted. Well, not geometric then. Your Earth curve's geometric limitation. It's a physical hill in the way. What do you mean refracted? It's the end of your argument then, because you need geometry to make an Earth curve claim. Almost enough. I thought it was enough when it first came out. It wasn't. Because you can just compartmentalise it into refraction until that refraction bulges up a geometric argument that comes next, which is the sextant argument, followed by the elevation angle argument refinement. Well, as soon as you get to those points with geometric straight lines being needed, and you've spent 2 years relinquishing them, it really does come to the forefront of anybody who's on the anti-flat Earth side. Now, for me, it's too advanced for an average Joe to get here and have this make them realise. But what it does do is push the anti-flat Earthers into a position where they make huge errors in what they're talking about, or overt lies, or clear omissions in their understanding of what's being discussed. All of those things will come to a forefront. Now, again, if you're an onlooker to that, all you're really assessing is who's got the strongest argument. And like we were talking about earlier, sometimes it doesn't necessarily have to be fully understood by the person who's comprehending it. When it's just a one-sided, this is how the Earth is, and it doesn't make sense, you're going to accept it anyway because you're not trying to make it not make sense. But when you're watching a debate, even though you might not fully understand both sides' argument, you know who's got the stronger argument when it's being disseminated to the opponent and they're stuttering and stammering and telling you how flat the Earth is.
Yeah, to make the statement of how, it's a flat, you're measuring a flat Earth, to turn it into a sphere, that can't be like a fun thing to say if you believe it's a sphere.
You've probably all seen them test. I forget the terminology now, where they put a group of people in a classroom and they ask them questions, and the majority of the class are giving wrong answers, and there's the one person who doesn't know follows along and gives the wrong answer because he doesn't want to fall away from the majority group. It's a bit like that, really, I think, for some of these globers. They're just scared they might be realising it, but they're just scared to walk out on their own and say, you know what, yeah, the Earth is flat.
While it's claimed that's true, I've seen plenty of research debunking those sorts of claim to be medical research or studies. And all of the information that you'll find on those sorts of studies are always staged. In other words, they'll explain the situation and, more often, a bit like NASA, disclaim that what you're about to see to represent that being the case is a dramatisation of it being the case. But you find me an example where it's actually the case. Same goes for the 100 monkey effect and various other things that people will start describing with those sorts of examples. Check out John Le Bon's channel or his website if you want to see a few of those sorts of things being debunked. Sorry to piss on your bonfire, by the way. That wasn't necessarily my intention. I just don't like people in the comments going, you realise that's a load of old nonsense, wives' tale, and actually blah, blah, blah. I just don't want that.
No worries, yeah. It's just blatantly obvious, and like we're discussing, it's unbelievable how they're not just, giving some serious thought to it and mulling it over in the head. There must be some other underlying reason why they're not looking at this with the evidence that you guys are providing and we're providing for them. It's there's got to be something going on.
In their minds, all they see is there's got to be something to overcome this. That's what goes through their mind. It'll come eventually, if it's not here already.
I'd like to have a different opinion than you, Nathan, here. I think they're already in the nut house.
Maybe we're with them. Maybe this little corner of the internet is just the nut house for flat earthers and anti-flat earthers alike. Just bundle them all over there.
No, it's not. We're the only sane ones here. Come on.
That's what someone who's crazy would say.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's why I kept my mouth shut.
Okay, who was the crazy one who once flew over the cuckoo's nest? Okay, was it Jack Nicholson? No. Was it the big engine? No.
Eventually, he went nuts.
Yeah, for good reason.
So you
asked if he was,
so you have to ask if he was nuts, and the answer is yes.
It was slightly irregular, let's put it that way.
Okie dokie. Meanwhile, I think that, you can, as a flat earther, easily descend into the same pits of hell with a lack of understanding of why you believe the Earth is flat, as the anti-flat earthers have in terms of why they believe the Earth's a sphere, when everything that we're presenting stacks up against it. Those are the same, to me, the same type of hell. A couple of weeks ago I was asking, well, I'm going to start reassessing why people think the Earth's flat on account of the fact that it's only been in recent days that I could say I've got a stone-cold proof that I can disseminate to others. The other arguments aren't therefore invalid, and it wasn't that I didn't accept them, I just didn't like them. They weren't what I would feel was appropriate to present to somebody else and say, here you go, here's a method. It's called celestial navigation. It requires we measure a flat plane in order to do it. The maps and models that are derived from it were taken from flat Earth angle measurements to Polaris. So we live on a flat Earth. The Earth is obviously, observably, measurably, and navigatably flat. That's a statement I can make with confidence. Now, it came to railguns and, I don't know, radar horizons. I'm sure there's a whole bunch I could rattle off if I wanted to. I just didn't like any of them, right? So then you go, okay, now I do like this one. I'm like, okay, that makes me step back one more step and go, well, what was it that kept me confident in my flat Earth belief up until then? You go, well, maybe it wasn't as sound as you potentially thought it was. Because what did you actually have to present to somebody else? Nothing that you were confident to present as a positive assertion, as you keep pointing out, John. Oh, well, now we've got a positive assertion. We're actually making a claim. What, after 7 years of living on a flat plane, we finally got a positive assertion of it?
Can I say something?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. We disprove the globe. And that's all you need to know, that we're not in a spinning water ball. What we're on, I don't know.
Hold on. But see, that's different. Debunking a claim and making a claim are two different.
But that's what keeps you there that long, though. Yeah. So this is what we're going to do. Look. All right, this is what...
Yeah, you're right, John. Carry on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, making a positive claim and then debunking someone else's positive claim aren't the same thing. So, you know, you can debunk Earth as a sphere, and like he said, still not know what it is. You know, it's you know, you'd have to take inferences from that and use your logic and reason to come to that it's flat if you're just debunking the sphere. But with this, it must be flat for an elevation angle to be measured. A lot different.
Agreed. So, given that we're on the tip of the spear, and this is relatively, a month and a half old for us in terms of the way it's been phrased, the way it's been packaged, and the way it's now being presented, it does kind of make you assess, where were we at? Where was I actually at before this? Yeah, we're debunking a sphere over and over again. And yes, we can infer many different things from the way that the Earth is, I don't know, plotted out on a map. But you need to take maybe one step in logical inference to get there. This is, like John says, very, very different. It can only be flat to perform this process. It's required. That kind of positive assertion hasn't been in my grasps since I got here. So I took it on my experience and on the inferences of the logic that I could infer on second-hand experience in many an instance. Some of it wasn't, some of it was first-hand experience. But from the moment I recognised from my experience Earth was flat, I didn't have anything that solid from there till now to make as a positive claim. Now I do. Well, why am I detailing this? Well, because the majority of flat earthers were where I was at 6 weeks, 7 weeks ago. So that tends to suggest that those people are in the same boat when they come across a problem, might not necessarily be this problem, but any problem we cover on flat earth debate that they haven't got an answer for. Well, I know it's flat, so there's going to be a reason. I just can't get around this argument. Well, that's not very good. You know, that's not very assured as flat earthers. So the self-assured ground that everybody was on, a flat plane that is, I can assert that with dogged determination today, may not be as sturdy as they think it is. And I'm talking to flat earthers. That'll change with time. But you've got to reach a pinnacle. You've got to reach the tip of the spear. And this is it. This is that tip. Earth must be flat to measure an angle.
Yeah, and that's devastating if you believe it's a sphere, because you're measuring the same angle from an Earth that must be flat.
It's measured flat because it has to be.
I beg to differ. I think there were some great arguments, and obviously the Sexton argument is fantastic. Who can say otherwise? But it didn't do anything for me but validate what I already assumed the Earth was and proven to be based on all the other things that we did. So I think it's up to the individual how critical the evidence needs to be for them to step out. So for Nathan, he didn't like the other arguments as much, but they were definitely valid. But this one stands out and home run every time. So I think it's up to the individual. The Sexton argument did take me past any threshold. I already knew the Earth was flat.
So did I. But what I'm saying is, in terms of the strength of a discussion, the strength of a debate, the strength of an argument point, up until this point, I hadn't got one that I would make as a positive claim. Now, it's easy to brush past that and just go, let's not focus on the fact that that actually places us in quite an ignorant position up and prior to now. I'd rather focus on it, because that can expand out to the people who aren't on the tip of the spear.
When Tim Osmond said a fallacy is better than nothing, what he was implying is that since you don't have a positive claim and we do, they may be fallacious, at least we have a positive claim.
Right.
That was where he was coming from. It was stupid, but that was his logic in that moment. Well, lack of logic in that moment.
Right. And prior to that, my defence has always been, I don't need to provide you with a just so story. I don't need to give you a made-up story around my logical inference about the Earth being flat so that you can imply it along with me. That's not good enough. Now, you need a flat plane, and you need a flat plane, and you need a flat plane. Do you need a flat plane? You do. You need a flat plane. We all need a flat plane to do this. So let's all discuss how we all need a flat plane. Well, that's far better as far as I'm concerned. Nobody's going to be listening to my opponent tell me how flat they need it to be and try and justify how they can get it to be flat to do this without hearing what's going on. The Glober's trying to discuss with the flatty how he's going to get his flat plane to use. Doesn't that say it all? Does to me.
Yeah, man. Globers need to know how they can use our flat plane, that's the real thing, in order to prove their globe. That's why they keep asking.
Yeah, they're begging for a tangent, debunked in 2020, plane. Why? Because that's how it's done.
It's like John said, though, the other day, even, well, Eratosthenes needed a flat plane. And how long's that been out there?
First
that information.
First argument point I heard, one of them, like really early on in the discussion, and if you do a cursory search for a fundy normie, they're going to come across that argument pretty swift, don't you think? It's one of their weakest arguments now we're here. Today, that was long forgotten about. We very rarely covered sticks and shadows. Now, sticks and shadows proves Earth's flat. Can't get that elevation angle.
Eratosthenes was the first person to actually prove the Earth is flat.
Correct.
Technically.
That's right. That's right, Arwen. Isn't it amazing where we've come from?
Yeah.
Well, that one's such a big one, too, because it was like everybody missed it, too. That the Earth must be flat for him to acquire that angle.
Again,
you know, even with
no, go on, John.
Even with Neil deGrasse Tyson showing it in diagrams, everybody missed it.
Yeah.
You know, nobody's pointing out, taking the measurements from the ground, not from the sun, so you can't get an angle, you know, without it being flat.
Back in 2015, people used to show it and almost be apologetic for the fact that rather than adding in the R value and bending the line that you've measured, you can just do it flat. Look, it works the same when you do it on a flat plane. It's like, no, you're missing the point. You've completely missed the point, Nathan, from the past 2015 Nathan Oakley. Because it's not that it works the same. It can only work doing it flat. They bend the angle measurement that they took after they measured it flat. Like you say, John, nobody spotted it.
That's one of the reasons it makes me think it's not. It's kind of like a trick that humanity's played on itself. You know.
Oh, I don't know about
that. Hey, everyone.
Hey, Brian.
Well, no, I don't know that, but I'm just less likely to assume that, you know, there's a group of guys that knew better and like rubbing their hands together saying, we're going to trick these dummies. They tricked themselves.
Neil deGrasse Tyson possibly knew it because he used it on a television program back in 2015 or 16. He pointed out that does work flat. And he went through the process of how it works flat. And then he said, but we know that it's a globe. And he showed it happening on a globe. Can't remember exactly how he showed it. But he tried to show how there was 3 wells. With flat, it only works with 2 wells, he tried to say, which was not true. He tried to cheat. He showed 3 wells. But his 3rd well wouldn't meet with the centre of the globe. I remember Dave Murphy pointing this out. Years and years ago.
But that still that's not the same as the positive assertion that it must be, not that it can be flat, it must be flat.
Exactly.
To get the angle.
Yeah.
It's
back in 2015, we were saying, look, when you do smokescreen design, responding to Red Rhetoric, that is, responding to Jaren in terms of acquisition of an angle measurement to the moon, and then how you're going to derive R values from it. And Red Rhetoric takes apart his maths and says, look, they're inserting a sphere value here, but you can just as easily not insert the sphere value. And then you get this measurement instead. You're like, hold on a second. So they added in an R value to a flat Earth measurement. So they added that after they did the flat Earth bit. So they had to do it flat and then add R afterwards. So they therefore bent the line that they used to get the angle, invalidating their insertion of the R. Because if the R was true, they wouldn't have got the angle to insert it after the fact. Just nobody spotted that. They all just went, you can do it on a flat Earth too. Two? No.
Yeah.
Only on a flat Earth. What's that? You can add in R after? Well, then you wouldn't have been taking an angle, would you?
Well, that's how they always have to do it, right? So, yeah, you can presuppose R on any model, right?
No, not initially. The flat plane to get the angle.
This is what Adam pulled apart at Arwin. So the guy came in with his trying to get a draw. Look, I can turn, he didn't say this, the flat Earth acquisition of elevation angle measurements to Polaris and a map that you derive from that with latitude and longitude lines. I can turn that into anything. I can turn it into a triangle. I can turn it into a plane. I can turn it into a sphere. I can turn it into a trapezoid. I can turn it into anything you like. Yeah, until Adam comes along and goes, yeah, but your starting point wasn't the sphere one that you turned it into, was it? The starting point was a flat plane to get angle measurements. Then you can turn it into a sphere or a trapezoid or whatever you like. Not before. So the starting point wasn't sphere. He's hoping we can say, oh yeah, we can turn the flat Earth angle measurements into any model. So therefore it could be any shape. We don't really know. No, we do know because we had to start making those models with flat Earth angle measurements. That was the starting point. So which one do all of those models rely on? They all rely on us having a flat plane.
Right, you can turn a flat plane into any model you like.
Precisely.
Yeah, but you need the flat plane first.
Indeed. So again, to reiterate, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of a positive assertion for a flat Earth, I'm glad I made it clear up until now that I don't need to give any just so stories because you've come up with a just so story about what the horizon is with boats falling over it and it being a sphere Earth hill in the way. Yeah, I'll just debunk that. What's that? I've now got to tell you what the horizon is on a flat Earth? No, I don't. There's no need for me to back up any positive claims I haven't made. You're the one making it. It's been debunked. And that's where it got left. Now, it's only happened the other day. I've trimmed this out as well. This will come out over the weekend. I'll publish it to members sometime later today for those of you watching live. And I remember. But the guy came in and was like, there's no flat Earth angles. There's no flat Earth measurements. Now, had he come in 2 months ago, it might have developed into a reasonably good discussion. But for the fact that he had no position, he said, I'm not claiming a sphere. I'm not claiming anything. Just telling you flat earthers haven't got any measurements. Now, I thought about it while I was editing. I was thinking, yeah, he's a bit late. Because all he got in response was, yeah, we do actually have a positive claim now. It's back to you pointing out Tim Osmond saying fallacy is better than nothing. In other words, we're making a positive claim that we do have a sphere. Let's argue about it all day long. And you will debunk it. Well, the main focus of that is positive claim sphere, flat earther idiot says he's debunked it because I didn't understand either the first claim or the debunking. Therefore, the flat earther lost. Doesn't matter that we really won. Doesn't matter that we got them to never concede, go round in circles 3 times with a failure to actually address the point. None of that does anything other than address a positive claim of a sphere. Now, here we are with a very different scenario. Now we make the positive claim. What's that? You're going to ask us about something to do with a globe model. You'll need a flat earth for that. Immediately we'll make the positive claim from this point forward. And yeah, I'll be happy to defend it.
But Nathan, they have a more elaborate fictional interpretation of the data, basically filling in the canvas. Their painting that's based on fiction is more elaborate than that of the flat earthers, that are just holding on to skepticism for some strange reason, right? So that's good enough for them, because their story is bigger than ours.
Yeah, and it's got so big that we've got to the origins, and the origins were a flat earth, Arwin. So while you say, oh, well, there's skepticism, no, when we show how the developmentation of the globe took place by way of flat earth angle measurements to Polaris, when you can show that's how it was done, where they're going to go, that's the origin of their model, our model, any model. So it's all derived from a flat earth. That's not skepticism. That's exposing the reality of their model.
Well, they go back to the drawing board, and then they come up with the same thing over again, forgetting that it's already been debunked.
Well, they're trying to do
that loop.
They're trying to do that now by saying, well, not saying, but in essence saying, let's just forget about the fact we got these angles from a flat earth. Let's talk about some challenge that uses the angles taken from a flat earth, and you can tell me how those flat earth angles that we're not going to mention have come from a flat earth or admit that they've come from a flat earth, unless you're Zanuck, the only one to do so far, how they work on a flat earth. You're like, really?
Yeah, man.
Really?
Well, that's the difference between a positive claim and a debunking, because a truthful positive claim, both sides have to take that.
Well,
right?
Technically, the challenge, as Nathan basically explained it, shouldn't be too hard to do. It's like, oh, how does this flat plane derived geometry thing, math, how does that work on a flat plane? Well, you already know it's derived from a flat plane, so it shouldn't be too hard to basically lay that out. Now, of course, they're going to ignore that, yeah, because that's what they do. But it shouldn't be too hard to do.
If the stars hold a geometric position, which, it's only an apparent position that we derive geometry from.
Well, I don't think that there should be any if involved. If it is truly derived from a flat plane, then it shouldn't be too hard to lay that out. Doesn't really matter what they involve in.
No, the angle measurements are taken from a flat plane to an apparent position.
Talking about stars, Arwin. The GP isn't an apparent position. The star you're measuring to when you're actually utilising the information that's been gathered, put in the almanacs, put on down on a map, when you use that, you're taking an angle measurement to a position that's only apparent, i.e. the star's position. Now, what does that relate to in terms of where it is on the ground? Well, if you were standing below where you just measured to, so you measure the angle to that star, and then you move to the position. So you've got the fastest speedboat. It'll get you there in 2 seconds flat. So the GP hasn't moved. Obviously, this isn't in reality. But at that time, that's where the star is below, or you are then below the star, on the ground. But the point John's making is that when you take those measurements and derive maps from them, you're taking a positional piece of information and then relating it to the ground as you back away from something like Polaris. Well, that's still an apparent measurement to something in the sky. You're just translating it to where it'll be at a given time over a piece of land. And that's in flux. The stars move.
Right. They put an anchor in the heavens directly above you, and then they turn all those correlating points over Earth where these stars are directly above into a flat map that's parallel to the flat Earth that it's derived from.
Yes, the celestial map, if you will. Yes, correct. Any more for any more before I ask people to stay tuned?
I just wanted to say, though, the positive claim, when it's truthful, both sides will have to take it as a default position. And that's what you've seen with Zanuck, and all Globers are eventually going to have to do it. But now it's going to get really messy because they're going to have to go through a lot of delusional beliefs after that to deny the original claim to begin with.
Hmm. You know how hard it was for me to actually realize what I just described about the parallel star planes correlating with the direct positions above? Like, that's taken me a long time to actually get that. But what it effectively is the globe of the heavens unfolded into a flat plane. It is actually a globe, a parent globe, to us, to an observer. But they basically do the exact reverse process of how they created the Earth's map. It's really bizarre how that works.
With that, I'll say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering Streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, hit the PayPal link, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching on a Premiering stream, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
Do you guys mind if I ask a dumb question, or do I need to wait till some greetings or anything?
Feel free to ask a dumb question anytime.
Thanks, Extremis.
So,
go ahead, Jay.
One of the guys who goes to a bunch of our flat Earth meetups around here asked me a question the other day that I never considered, and that is that a lot of the pictures of star trails and pictures of the stars are taken with fisheye lenses. And how do the movements of the stars actually look if you don't use a fisheye lens?
Say fisheye. A lens is a lens, so you're always going to have a certain amount of lensing, no matter what you do. So, what do you mean exactly?
Well, like he was noting, especially like stars that are below, like lower in the sky, not higher in the sky, but lower in the sky. They don't seem to look like you might see in the pictures. And I just wonder if, like you say, every lens has a some distortion effect to it. It's just the nature of optics. But if you don't use if you use a fisheye lens, does it give this artificial view of the sky that you've got not just bendy water on the ground, but you have bendy stars in the sky?
To a point, yeah. But I mean, what's in center frame when you're looking at a particular star? It's not going to radically change how you see the star unless you're using a camera that you don't know how to use, as opposed to a telescope that you're just focusing, as I used to look at stars with. So, do you mean, will it fundamentally change the appearance of the star to make it look like it's in water or some shit? Because that's usually an error in operation of a camera.
Well, no, maybe a little more like if you do the long exposure where you set the aperture so you can do a really, really long exposure of the stars, and you get some of that star trail effect. Would you get like would those trails look differently if you're not using a fisheye lens?
Yes.
Would they look more straight, or
Yes.
how?
Yes, it's going to bend their perceived path in a time lapse more at the extremes of the lens. Yes.
So, in other words, when they take those fisheye lens pictures of the skies, they end up just furthering their helio nonsense religion.
I mean, the stars do appear to move through the sky, though, don't they? So when you say that, it's not really, because it's only the inference that they take thereafter that does that. So the quality or the appearance of the rotation that you're describing in a time lapse, I don't think it matters to the assertions that come thereafter from a sphere believer. They'll make their inferences regardless.
Yeah, normally they don't even show the stars when they're supposedly taking pictures of Earth from space in the ISS. So there doesn't seem to be any star sighting when you go up really high anyway. So they don't really involve it at all, right? So fisheye lens for the Earth, well, don't worry, because you're not going to see any stars anyway.
Well, I'm talking from the ground when they take the picture of these star trails from the ground.
Okay, I think I kind of understand what you're asking now. You're saying to your average Joe just sees that. Will that give them a greater understanding that they're on a sphere when they see it presented that way? Maybe. If they're not assessing it with any logic attached, and they just think the Earth's a sphere anyway? Maybe.
All righty, appreciate the response, my friend. Have a good day.
Pleasure. If that's all you wanted, great. Another happy customer.
Real quick, I'd like to chime in, ask the panel a question. If you guys heard of Corey Kells and his Marks survey positioning device, Globebusters did about 4 months ago. They re-uploaded his presentation.
Corey, something with his globe positioning. What?
Corey Kells, yeah, it's Mark's sun surveying positioning device. So it's claimed that 45 degrees sector test using the sun. He's supposed to be a military subject matter expert.
I didn't know anything about this, but did you want to give us a breakdown on what the claim is?
All right, so it's supposed to be every 3 hours is 45 degrees from the subsolar point. He claims it's more than it exceeds the 80 degrees. I don't know too much about it all. I'm just wondering if you guys ever heard about it.
No, but I can immediately turn it into a flat Earth proof if you like.
Well, that's what he's claiming. He's actually a flat earther.
Yeah.
And he's saying he's got military geometry and.
It sounded like what you were about to say was the degrees that were measured wasn't possible on a sphere, correct?
Yes, it wasn't. It's over 45 degrees every 3 hours and more. And it's a problem because there's 8 portions, which equates to 24 hours, but it's also more. And he's saying it's a local sun.
Okay,
I have his whole.
No, cool. I just want to, before we whistle past the point. So, were you listening to the live show?
Slightly, a little bit. I had a lot of things I was doing in the background.
Did you hear us talk about Eratosthenes and how we didn't spot that the angle measurement itself required a flat plane? Did you listen to that bit?
Not really. I was really busy in the background.
Okay. So, to get the angles that you're describing that can't work on a sphere, you couldn't get those angles in the first place unless the Earth was flat.
And military geometry, is that the type of geometry that stands up and salutes, or stands in line for chow or something? What's that?
I don't know. He just claims that he has military science.
Military science too.
Something.
Wow.
Some kind of geometry.
Huey, generally speaking, it's a private matter.
It's a What about corporal punishment for that?
It's not a major point, Huey. Just let it slide. It's not a major point.
All right,
come on,
all right,
come on.
enough.
We're majoring on the minors here.
Yeah. Enough. Don,
Okay,
did you catch what Nathan said?
Yes, I got it. I got it.
Yeah.
I did hear this guy's presentation. Adam Macon's familiar with it. It was very hard to follow him. He sounded like he understood what he was talking about, but nobody else could.
That's why I was asking you guys, because I was like, okay, 45 degrees every 3 hours, you'll get 8 portions of that, which will equate 24. And he's claiming that there's more. If there's more degrees, that it's a problem. He says there's more than 80 degrees, which puts the sun local. He says 50 to 70 miles for the sun, which, you know, it's
Well, there's a bigger
interesting. That's what I was
problem.
asking.
No, I'm glad you've
Well, there's
repeated it because we're still on the same point. And every time this happens, maybe John's about to do the same thing. So I'll let you go if you are, John. You know,
Yep.
we're whistling past the point, but go on, John. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that the fact that he's measuring any degrees of an angle means the Earth must be flat. He wouldn't be able to measure an angle on the surface of a sphere.
Are you following along? I mean, even if you are. So what we're doing with these claims from sphere earthers that are presumably in this instance being taken apart, there's a claim in terms of the amount of degrees that will be attributable to a sphere earth of the sun's movement. Well, amount of degrees? So you're going to take an angle measurement to it then? Well, you're going to need a flat baseline. It's an elevation angle measurement.
Correct.
So it proves Earth's flat. So for anybody out there, this is what I was kind of focused on the live show. We've all missed the point for 7 years because we've been arguing how this debunks the globe because we've got a greater angle that we couldn't achieve if we were on a sphere. No, we couldn't achieve an angle at all. We couldn't measure this to claim it as a globe proof unless it was flat. So they've measured a flat Earth elevation angle to the sun at a particular time, and then they've measured it again at a different time and said the amount of degrees on a sphere... No, whoa. We just measured off a flat Earth. That's how we got this to make the claim. So it goes no further.
That would be a bada beam, bada boom.
Well, it's just that for 7 years, the focus has been on the positive claim. You know, Tim Osman I can't believe it's going to be used as an example that's slightly positive, even though it's dumbfoundedly stupid in terms of the assertion itself. A logical fallacy is better than nothing summarises how having a positive claim and having your opponent defend it only, without positioning a positive assertion against it, and pointing out that there is no requirement to do so when you're debunking an assertion that's come from a positive claim of a sphere, you're always essentially on the back foot. And that instance, that typifies it beautifully, Don. You've got an example that is a stone-cold flat Earth proof that's been used, measured off a flat plane, not highlighted as a flat Earth proof, and then being explained how that stone-cold flat Earth proof, when translated into a globe, that it could not be done to do that, doesn't work in terms of the movement of the sun when measured off a flat plane. It's like, hang on a second, isn't anybody spotting that there's a lot of flat Earth plane measurement going on to make these assertions that don't work on a sphere? They couldn't ever have been asserted to have worked on a sphere, to be debunked ever. You know, it's like 3 weeks ago, John saying, by pointing this out, we eradicate a whole bunch of claimed to be paradoxes. They're not paradoxes anymore. There's no need to explain how this couldn't work on a sphere. It can never be claimed to work on a sphere. It's using angle measurements.
Well, it's like when QE pointed out that debunking space as a region that exists takes apart, 99% of the claimed evidences they have. It's sort of the same premise of that logic. Like, why bother going in to their begging the question when, reality destroys them?
And then look how easily somebody like Zanuck will came in the other day and just told us, yeah, use the flat plane first. Like, when I was listening to it, I was just like, look how in that 1 second he's very honest. Like, yeah, we use the flat plane first. Well, if you live on a sphere, what the hell flat plane are you talking about?
The one you need for the math.
The same math that you'll then use later and turn it into a globe.
Yeah.
But why start with the flat plane first? Why not start with the sphere first if that's literally what we're living on? That's the part that doesn't make any sense.
Because the model doesn't work like that.
Model.
Chocolate. It's like virus saying, yeah, if you look this way, there is no refraction. And then you saying, well, which way is that?
Yeah. I wanted to know which direction do you look at to not get refraction?
Right.
Oh my God.
Well, I like when they invoke refraction, right? Because their geometric horizon, the point of tangency was always refracted. And that's the funny part. How are you going to get standard refraction 7/6R if your horizon is indeed refracted? You won't be able to get that
The
value.
horizon doesn't refract, not even in their fairy tale story. So that's a bunch of hogwash. What is refraction, by the way?
Right.
That's what I thought.
But John, I wanted to address that and be a real pain in the ass for a second. Technically, when they say the horizon doesn't refract, it actually means the apparent horizon. The objects do. But if the horizon was geometric, then technically you could consider it also to be an object.
Objects refract. Really? Do objects refract? What type of refraction are you talking about?
The actual one on which the fictional construct of terrestrial refraction are based.
Terrestrial refraction doesn't exist. So your whole argument is toast.
You did just say that.
I just said that literally. But the thing is, within the real studies of optical displacement phenomena, right, it's always objects that in relation to the apparent horizon can displace or compact or stretch, not the apparent horizon itself. But if only the horizon was geometric, then technically it could be considered to be an object, not an apparent horizon. Isn't that just extremely confusing?
I got it the first time. So what I'm saying here is, in their fairy tale story, that you are correct. But their fairy tale story is bunk, is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. I agree.
Good. Yeah.
Finally, because you
but
were, until Arwin clarified it, talking at cross purposes, because Arwin's being clear that he's talking about the framework and constructs of a model that he's detailing and how it works within it, and QE's saying, well, that's not real, it's debunked, or that doesn't exist in reality. And yeah, Arwin's more than happy to concede that that's the case and then carry on talking about it, aren't you, Arwin?
Indeed.
QE, much like the elevation angle must have a plane for it to be gathered. No curved baseline. The subject matter expert, Andrew Thomas Young, said all his refraction studies came off of a flat plane.
Yes, he did.
Yes, but he also said that in his diagram depicting the refracted 7/6R horizon, that we will draw a line of sight to the geometric horizon. And he hasn't got a line of sight. So the guy's a double-speaking clown.
Well, more to that, for him to assert the angle of light is changing, he needed a flat plane to do that. That's why the flat plane.
Draw a line of sight to the geometric horizon. So where would that be?
OG in his diagram. First, we must draw a line of sight to the geometric horizon, full stop. It's on the. It'll flash by because I've included it a couple of times with the text highlighted, where he's drawing a line of sight, quote, to the geometric horizon. Now he's got to, because he's going to be utilising that value in the geometry to refract the horizon to a different position. So he requires it. So the fact that he's labelled it as having a line of sight with a dotted line that we can't see is just the end of his double-speak contradiction. You can't see a geometric horizon to measure a geometric horizon to refract a geometric horizon to a non-geometric horizon that you couldn't measure. But he does by saying I've got a line of sight to the geometric horizon. He's got no atmo dotted line in his picture.
The geometric horizon just isn't a horizon because of the refraction.
Nathan, can you draw a line to a thought experiment?
No, that's the point.
Well, I just wanted to go back to what Tenth said about being done on a flat plane. The reason he done them on a flat plane is because he needed to acquire angle measurements. Can't get them from a curved surface.
Yeah, so when he's asserting his angular relationships, he's going to define them by way of angle measurements off a flat plane with the refraction values and then their derivatives inserted after the fact with R. So correct, even his derivations of his R-based refraction, if he infers in any way that they've come from actual refractive effects, which they have not, he's going to have derived them from a flat plane also, and that's in his declarations when he describes the bait and switch of actual refraction, which isn't 7/6R, I might add.
Funny how when we were reading that line out from Andrew Thomas Young, like, it was a thing to these guys, right? Oh, yeah, I'm at work, I'm sorry. It was a whole big thing, flat plane. And now, after the Black Swan, now listen to them telling us how much we need a flat plane to do their measurements. Isn't that adorable?
It's adorable that all those arguments that we whistle past having required flat planes to make the argument for a sphere are going to all come to pass again over the next 12 months, potentially. You know, we'll go, what about this argument that we had where we explained how Earth would be working with the flat Earth angle measurements as a sphere, and how they didn't actually work as a sphere with the flat Earth angle measurements. They could actually be shown to invalidate those angle measurements they took from a flat plane as a sphere. It's like, when you start phrasing it that way, like, bloody hell, there's going to be loads of them, because they all require a flat Earth. You know, the dam's breaking at a rapid rate.
My favorite is the when they hold up a celestial sphere flat plane model, claim it as their model, and then tell you, you have to show them a model when they're showing you a flat plane model. Hilarious. That's the big one for me.
Right, it's going into the closet together. You show me your model, I'll show you mine.
Here you go, that's mine. Don't show me mine, that's mine.
Zanuck yesterday on the show was so funny.
Right?
Bring it back to chocolate. Zanuck was so funny yesterday. He said that he was asked, do you need a flat Earth to get an elevation angle first? Yes. Can you get an elevation angle with a sphere first? Yes. How do you do that? Well, you need a flat Earth first. That's it. If you followed the conversation,
that was the rest. The rest of it was the sphere comes later. Was the end of that. The sphere bit comes later, he said.
And it doesn't, by the way. The sphere bit never comes. The only sphere bit that there is, we need a sphere for celestial navigation. That is the bit. There's no cowbell there. There's nothing after that, by the way. Just want to let you know.
But there is no sphere of the heavens either. There is no sphere of the heavens. There's a roof that's utilised in terms of how you back away from that roof, if you want to call it that. Because the relationship in terms of where the height of the star is, we have no idea why that relationship is the way it is. Now, we know where the star is above on a piece of land at a given time. Yeah, we know that. And we know that we can take an angle measurement to get that distance. But does that mean that we know what the stars are? No. Does it mean that we know that there's an angular... What's another thing that's angular? Oh, right, perspective. There's an angular relationship. As you back away from the star, it moves towards the horizon. Same way as if you back away from a lighthouse, it moves towards the horizon. Well, when you're detailing that, you're talking about linear relationships. In perspective terms, that's what you're writing down when you take those flat Earth angles. Well, that doesn't mean you've got a dome. It just means the tool you measured it with has got an arc. So can you infer that suddenly you've got an arc because your view presents itself that way when measured with a tool with an arc? No, of course not. But of course we're going to call it the dome or the arc or the sphere of the heavens. Why? Just because there's an angular relationship to them, that's all.
I have something
And because
to add
it always seems to present itself like a sphere or a demisphere to the observers.
No, it doesn't. That's just an apparent meaning how you view it.
Yeah.
Well, so what? So you've got an arc of vision. That doesn't translate into what is above your head. Nor does it work when you try and actually measure it and utilize it in the way that it is measured and utilized. That's a relationship that can be far more akin to perspective in terms of the relationships and the lines that you're drawing to it. Again, just because as it's presented as you look over your head from left to right, from horizon to horizon, you can say, oh, I'm seeing an arc of them. No, you're not.
Well, yes, you are. It appears so, but you can't really do anything with it. Yeah, it appears apparent. Not
apparent,
actual.
not actual. That's what apparent means. Yeah. It's not actually that way.
I know. That's what I'm saying, right? But when you want to put it in a mechanical framework, that's when you have to coordinate with what the stars right above you do, and then you make that flat map parallel to the flat Earth.
Right.
But none of it is actual positions. It's just a tool, because appearances of this apparent demisphere of the celestials is what we see. That's the impression. That is what
that's wrong. Wrong. Stop. It's not what we see. It's how we see. Not what we see. That's wrong. You don't see an arc of the heavens. It's how we see the sky. Brian, I'd rather hear from you. You've been trying to get
the angular relation between one part and another is the same.
Hold on, Arwin. Can we just...
Right? It's not an arc. It is like a demisphere, and the angular relations are persistent, right? Just because you can only work it out in some kind of a map when using the stars directly above, doesn't mean that in the actual observation, it isn't just exactly a demisphere, because it is. And the angular relations are persistent, even
we're
of
in
the
agreement
sun.
Then. Okay, I'll just agree with you. Yes. In terms of how we see it, it is. Yes, I agree. Okay, Brian, go ahead.
All right.
Yeah, I actually have something fairly pertinent. It's a question. I'm kind of questioning something here. You know the way we're told that the star, when it's on the horizon, is higher than it really is. That's what we're told, right? We've always been told that there's no refraction until it goes into kind of below 15 degrees, things start becoming refracted. And we're told when we see the star at 5 degrees above the horizon, it's actually more than likely at the horizon. Now, what about if when we're seeing the star after hour 90, it's actually lower, it's actually lower in the sky than it appears lower to us due to not just our vision, but due to the fact that we're looking through a gradient of density of air, that it actually appears lower in the sky. And when it actually gets down into below 15 degrees, it starts to look its actual height. But we're told the opposite, that it's actually appearing higher than it should be. So who needed it to be higher than it should be? Who needed that?
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, in globe refraction terms, they would require it to be so, but we don't know either way. And in terms of navigation, you just avoid getting that close to the horizon, so it kind of makes no odds.
No, the reason I'm asking is important because I've been looking into how the angles work and different things, and they have a point that orthographically, the angles to something orthographically won't work. Like, this is just on software, so you don't have perspective, you don't have any refraction or anything happening. So orthographically, side on, it does, even using the same exact distance as they use, it works better for the surface of their globe from their GP of Polaris to their equator along a longitude line, right? It works better for them because with us, you end up a couple of degrees above the horizon. But in reality, we're told that there's no refraction until the star appears to be supposedly higher above our horizon, right? So let's say you're standing at the North Pole. You look at Polaris above your head. Like, I don't know if it's exactly there, but let's just say I'm directly at Polaris GP. And and I move away, or let's just say, for instance, Polaris moves away, or something like that, right? And it gets to 45 degrees for me. Now, that 45 degrees for me, what I view as 45 degrees may actually be higher than 45 degrees in reality, but I think it's 45 degrees. And then when it gets to just at the horizon, it appears higher, I believe, it appears higher than it really is. But maybe it's actually, that is its actual height. And all along we were thinking the wrong way, that it would actually appear lower in the sky than it really is.
Okay, I've got you so far.
Yeah.
Okay, number one, yeah, maybe. But number two, why do we need it?
I'm just curious. I just want to find out the answers. I just want to find out the answers.
How high the stars are.
Well, the thing about this is that it's not about the height of the stars. It's about how we view them. Because basically what they're falling back on now is how it works better on on diagrams and software. The whole thing works easier in their model, where they get to view Polaris, right, in their model at 0 degrees when they're 5,400 nautical miles away from it, down along their sphere. Now, that also involves Polaris being a massive, huge thing, and they need the two-way speed of light calculation, there may be a measurement, blah, 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 blah. But the point is that I reckon there's been because there's been trickery, I could be wrong, but there's been a load of trickery with everything else. So why couldn't there be trickery with this? Because when I view 45-degree angle to something in the sky, that's how I view it. So, but then I'm told to believe that when that thing is down towards the horizon, that is higher than it should be. But maybe it's below.
I've lost track of you now. Hold on. Yeah. I've lost track of you. You said, when I'm looking at a star at 45 degrees, that's how I see it. But that isn't how you view, is it? What do you mean?
Well, no, if I'm viewing a star and it's 45 degrees to me.
Yeah. But all you want, because when you're talking about height is how you could state your angle measurement. I sometimes interchangeably say height when I'm talking about the angle. It's the height of the star, meaning the angle to it. Yeah? But that description, that word when used interchangeably with angle measurement, height, is actually irrelevant because you're never deriving the height. Now, I get what you're saying. You're saying, yeah, but I'd be interested to know if we actually could acquire one and where there might be deception.
No, I'm not looking for the height. No, that's not.
Well, I'm lost then. I don't understand.
Yeah. The point I'm making is when I take a 45-degree angle to a star, right, maybe that 45-degree angle I'm taking, in reality, that star is not at 45 degrees. If I was to view it orthographically, that star could be at 52 degrees. But from my vantage point, due to maybe refraction and how our vision works in perspective, that I'm viewing it what I think is lower than it really is. Now, it still is...
Now I do follow, because you said about flipping it 90 degrees into a perspective view where you've got your head on the side of the star with an angle, with a triangle that you're just drawing out based on what you're seeing in the sextant, right? Now I follow you. But without knowing what the stars are, how do you know that you can actually translate it like that? No, I suppose you could, because triangulation would dictate that you could. Very interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, my point is that what we're told about things refracting and refraction, we're told that when the star is 5 degrees above the horizon, that we have to do maths to put it down on the horizon. But maybe the reality is that is the star's natural position all along. And when it was higher, it was actually, to our vantage point, it actually, when we were viewing it, it actually was lower in the sky than it truly was.
No, I got
maybe
you.
it's the opposite.
Anybody else got any comment on this? I've got nothing else to add, Brian, and you've said it 2 or 3 times now, and I've followed along the last time. Anybody else? No, we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. Thanks anyway.
As
I will
far as
add
I know,
something.
stars have no distance. Like, them being parallel is only a trick. It's only a trick to line up the apparent star locations when they're directly above, even though they're not an actual height above.
Yep.
It's only a trick.
It is. Well, because the fact that it works at all is amazing, because you can go up at altitude and make the same measurement. Well, yeah, we can argue all day about how you're getting parallel lines. How is that functioning? If it had an actual height, it would change. But it doesn't. So you go, my God, we've been offered this amazing tool in the sky. It's a clock, it's a calendar, it's a navigation tool. It's got all these aspects. Yeah, what's a star? Anybody? Anybody at all? Nobody bloody knows what it is.
A celestial light.
But it hasn't got a height. It's got no... Go on, Brian, go ahead.
So I'm saying, Arwen said something there that's not correct. Arwen said it has no height. But that's the same as saying that it's that infinite distance away. You don't know that.
Yeah, I do.
You don't know what the stars are, whether they have an actual elevation above the Earth, or if they're not, if they're just
No,
something...
I do know that. No, I do know that it hasn't got that. Do you want to know why? When you're using...
Oh, yeah?
Well, you go up to a certain elevation, you draw out your parallel lines. The angle measurement that you make is no different, is it?
No, the angle is the same, even if you raise an elevation.
So that immediately rules out it having a physical height, because it would change.
Right, there's no approach, there's no sign of an actual position in Euclidean space, even as an apparition.
Exactly. You can only derive distances based on, as Arwen just pointed out, where the star is above on the ground, with an angular relationship, but you never get in the height. And the angular relationship, this is where it blows my mind, never changes. So you go up higher and you still get the same angle. You can still derive the same position. Well, yeah, we focus on how, from a globe perspective, you can't do that because you've got diverging zeniths, and you can do that on a flat plane because you've got parallel zeniths. What about the fact that the angle hasn't changed as you've gone up in height? No one's mentioning that. It just reveals the majesty of the heavens. What they offer is amazing.
It's a persistent apparent sphere to the observer, wherever they are at on Earth. Above it or directly onto it, doesn't really matter.
Right, but with a flat and parallel perspective-based relationship that you can utilise to find your position, Arwen. So those two things in terms of what you see and what you can derive are both in contrast with one another. Same with if you derive or try to imply, a physical altitude to the object you're measuring. That's why you've got ultimately two different versions. If you're using an actual item on the ground versus a celestial item, a star. You can get the height of a lighthouse, right, Arwen?
Of a lighthouse, yeah.
Right, but you can't with the star. And the relationship, if you went up high, if you suddenly start having to measure a depression angle to the lighthouse because you've got above its actual height, that could happen real quick if you raise an elevation, right? You go up in a hot air balloon. What do you think is going to happen to the angle measurement to the lighthouse? Even if you remain on the same baseline, it's going to change, right? Not so with the stars.
You could even do it with a drone. Much easier.
But my point is, it changes. When you've got a physical item that you're measuring, and you can verify, you can see that angular relationship change with altitude because you're changing your angle to it, as opposed to what you see when you measure an angle to the stars.
Right, and that's specifically why I call it holographic. I know there's objections to that word, but that is the reason why I do that.
I'd like to make a comment on what Brian said.
I'm enjoying... Sorry, don't rumpus the alarm. We're really enjoying it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Brian said it works better The Globers always like that word. It works better. You know how many references I've shown and shared and found and read that if we assume the Earth is motionless and the stars are moving, navigation, that is celestial navigation, works better. Is that a concession?
Can only would be a concession because that's the reality. But yeah,
The concession of a flat Earth, I think he means.
Half a concession.
Yeah, but that's not really connected to it, because in this instance they are using Polaris, because it's only Polaris they ever use. They don't use the sun and other things, because it's only Polaris that works for them, because their whole model is built off flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris. So they always use Polaris, and they move away from Polaris down along their sphere to their equator, and then they say, see, because Polaris is really, really big in our model, and all, like, every angle that goes basically just takes a 90 up off of the surface of their sphere, and every angle goes to Polaris. So they make it work mathematically, is what I'm saying. In a diagram or something, they make it work mathematically, orthographically better, right, with what they do. But they don't take into account what we've just talked about, which is, well, they do and they don't with their massive star thing, where you go higher and the angle doesn't change. The angle should change if it has an actual location. The angle should change. That is true.
That's not what I said.
I know what you said, but what you said wouldn't matter in this instance because Polaris is stationary anyway.
I'm not saying it just for Polaris. I'm saying they want the navigator to assume the Earth is motionless and that the stars are moving. That's similar to Zanuck saying, yeah, I need a flat Earth first. And then Chocolate saying, well, can you do it from a sphere? Yeah, I can do it from a sphere. How do you do that? Well, I need a flat plane. This is the same thing.
So, if I may, what they technically do is they have the flat Earth surface, it's flat. Then they have the apparent globe of the stars, which is only apparent. They then unwrap that globe of the stars to be parallel with the flat Earth through that trick, the navigation trick. And then after that, they wrap both flat Earth and flat apparent parallel stars into a ball together.
No, they don't. They don't. That's wrong. So they actually take it to a equatorial plane, Arwin. And then they have a useless sphere that isn't being measured around that. And then they have the celestial sphere wrapped around that. So they still have a flat plane when they get to that stage.
But I mean, in the model, of course they have a flat plane. It's what it's based off. It's just in their warping of the data or changing its orientation, the projection of the data, that's the order that they do it with. First they unwrap the globe of the heavens parallel to the flat Earth, then they wrap both, in their minds at least, back into balls. Kind of funny.
Yeah, with a flat plane in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, equatorial plane. It's called the equatorial plane. That's just a fact. That's what they do. Equatorial plane.
I know, just don't mention it.
It's a flat plane to get the angles to the, what you were calling the dome of the heavens or the celestial sphere. Well, to get the angle to that, even if you've derived it from a flat plane, projected it onto a sphere, and then projected out a sphere with a celestial sphere around it, you've still got to get an angle in that model. So they use an equatorial plane. That's when they say we'll take the angle from the centre of a sphere, it runs parallel, all the lights running parallel. So the angle I get, which I can't get, from the curved surface, which I can't measure an angle with, is actually matching, it isn't because I can't measure it, the centre of Earth. Well, that is actually the equatorial plane, a flat plane in the middle of a sphere that isn't being used to get an angle to the dome of the heavens, or the celestial dome or celestial sphere or whatever you want to call it, based on how you see it appearing to you when you stand somewhere.
All right, fair enough. That's an even more detailed last part. But basically, that's what I saw it as. It's like, yeah, sphere of the heavens. Unwrap and then wrap both back up into a ball.
Sure.
But
they still have a flat plane at the end of it because at some point they're still going to need to measure angles.
Of course. They're always going to need that flat plane, otherwise nothing works.
Right. So when they're measuring an angle off a flat plane on the surface, they say, no, it didn't really come from the surface. Shh. It really came from the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth. The angles we couldn't measure actually run with parallel light rays to the centre. Why are they doing that? Well, so they can get it to the equatorial plane. The flat Earth bit in the middle that isn't using the sphere bit on the outside, they couldn't get an angle from.
Right, they got to tie it down to the original data.
Here it is on screen right now. So you've got a flat plane on the top and then a line to the centre. Why is that line running to the centre with a claim to be GP that isn't at the GP? Well, because they're going to use the equatorial plane that's at the bottom, that second line. So they can't get an angle from the surface, hence they've drawn out a flat tangent plane on it, but they're going to translate that to the centre of Earth, because that's where the angle actually works from. And what's that? Well, it's the equatorial plane, the flat Earth.
Right, because they can't actually use a spherical surface.
No, correct.
And they want to show that, but they can't use it.
Right, so when they tell us that they've drawn out a tangent plane and they're measuring to the GPs, that's the position on the ground of the stars, they tell us, or Rufy specifically told us, that they're not talking about the ground. He just left out the bit that actually matters, which is he's not talking about the sphere ground, because that isn't the line you're measuring on and isn't the position where the star's below. It's none of those. It's just not in relation to the measurement. So the sphere bit is totally useless. And when you say it's not the ground, no, it is the ground. That's what you're doing. You're navigating the ground. It's just not your sphere ground. Any more from Discord or G+?
Yeah,
Go on, Brian.
Yeah,
Last word.
they have to take an angle off the surface of Earth. Then they have to duplicate that angle on their equatorial plane. They have to make a right angle at their equatorial plane, and then that angle comes out to meet the surface of their sphere, and at that point, that becomes the GP, and that angle continues on then and becomes the zenith from the GP. But then they take the original angle. Their original angle never actually meets that zenith, because their original angle runs parallel to that angle that's coming from the center of their globe. So if this angle from the surface of their globe that they never got and couldn't get, running parallel to another angle from the center of their globe, a place that they could never get and never prove. And that angle, the initial angle they took in their model, never touches the zenith, never reaches the point where the zenith is going to. But they claim that both of them are going to the same place. But they can never get a zenith distance. This is something I pointed out in one of my videos recently. Another reason they can never use zenith distance is they can never get a zenith distance because their initial angle now won't reach the zenith of the GP, from the GP to the star. So their zenith distance will never work. It'll never mean anything, because they'll only have a line, and they deny this is even happening. They deny zenith distance completely, that it goes from their zenith just to their angle line. It doesn't even go to the other zenith. The whole thing is, it's such a mess.
It's broken, doesn't work, and isn't celestial navigation. But with that, did you want to add one more thing, 10th? I heard your road noise.
I do. Yes, thank you. The maximum altitude to subtract from, what's that number?
90.
90. A right angle. Can you have a right angle on a curved baseline?
No. Can't have any
It's
angle.
over right there.
Yeah.
It's over right there, because they have to subtract from 90 every time.
Yep, to get them parallel. Exactly. They can't get that angle, 90 degrees or otherwise, from a curved baseline. It's the end of the road for a globe, and that's why they're telling us that they need a tangent, open brackets, debunked in 2020, close brackets, plane. That's how you get the angle. Doesn't matter if they're claiming it's the centre of a sphere Earth that you can't stand in, or an angle that they're getting from a surface that can't give you one, that would be an angle, that's then translated to the centre of the sphere Earth on an equatorial plane. It's always working on a plane. They have to admit it, we have to admit it. It's how it's done. It's celestial navigation and the acquisition of an elevation angle, proving Earth is flat. With that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, hitting the PayPal link, joining as a member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.